Welcome to One Bills Lite, the podcast that is the express version of our Monday to Friday program, One Bills Live. Instead of 3 hours, you get 30 to 40 minutes of the best Steve and I have to offer with fresh content, along with our best interview of the week. Let's get things started.
And it's Steve Tasker who has been all over the field.
Kind of unique. He was kind of a dual-role player for you. Steve! A balloon. Steve! A blimp? We're not even in the stratosphere of normalcy here. All right, Steve, it's the Seahawks coming to town who, as we know, lead the league in scoring. The 538.com. A statistics and analytics site did a piece on Buffalo's odds of winning the division, okay? It's currently at 85%, in case you were wondering. But with respect to the rest of Buffalo's schedule this week, the game against Seattle, based on their ELO ratings, or ELO ratings, I don't even know what it's called. This is the second hardest game they have left on their schedule, topped only by their game against Pittsburgh. So, according to the 538 site, the Bills have just a 45.6% chance of winning Sunday's game. If they beat the Seahawks, their chances of winning the AFC East climb to 92%. And if they lose, their division title chances slip to 78%. We're talking a 14-point swing here. So first up, do you think the Bills' chances of victory on Sunday are better than 45.6%?
Yeah, I do. I think it's more than about a coin flip, a 50-50 anyway, particularly playing at home and particularly playing in what looks to be a nice weather day. I think this is a game where the Bills will show up big offensively. I think they're getting enough guys healthier. I think John Brown being back healthy is going to help them. John Feliciano gives them a little edge up front. Although the loss of Mitch Morse is big, I think the Bills are deep enough on the offensive line to dominate. Yeah. So I'd say, the Bills are getting better. The Seahawks, I don't think they're going to go 15-1, and I think the Bills are as tough a game as they have left on their schedule too. I don't think the Seahawks are looking past this game at all either. So the Bills have every reason to have some confidence going into this game that they're going to keep this close late and get a chance to win it.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think the Seahawks have played a slew of powerhouses so far this season. I mean, they played a couple of high-scoring teams, but they haven't played against any great defenses per se. I mean, San Francisco is probably your closest example, and they're injury-riddled and not the same defense they were at the start of the season. So, I mean, I'd put their chances at 50-50 at least, I would think.
Right.
So, to heck with the analytics. Moving along. Earlier this week on One Bills Live, we discussed where we thought the point-scoring floor had to be for the Bills in this game for a chance of coming out with a victory. You remember where we set the floor, Steve?
Yeah, right at 30 points.
Yeah. So we agreed that the point-scoring floor is probably 30 for a chance to win. But in taking a closer look at the scoring exploits of the Seahawks, Steve, I'm not so sure that even 30 points would get it done. Here's why, okay? Seattle has scored 30 points or more in 6 of their 7 games, and in the only game they didn't, they scored 27. So with that, we're going to just jump right into the numbers game this week concerning scoring. Are you ready, Steve?
Yeah, let's go.
Okay, so the Seahawks are the only team in the league to score at least 4 touchdowns in every game they've played this season, all 7 of them. Only 2 other NFL teams have been able to score at least 4 touchdowns in 5 games. So what 2 teams are those, do you think? 4 touchdowns in 5 of their games.
4 touchdowns in 5 of their games. I will say Arizona, and I'll say the Bills.
Nope. Those are both incorrect.
They're both incorrect.
They are both incorrect. The Bills have only done it.
I was going to say the Rams.
No, on the Rams as well. So 5 of the games played, the 2 teams that have scored at least 4 touchdowns in 5 games, Kansas City.
Oh, yeah, of course.
And Green Bay. Those are the teams that have scored at least 4 touchdowns in 5 of their games so far. So only 5 teams have scored at least 4 touchdowns in 4 of their games. So there's 5 other teams that have done it in 4 games this season. Okay. So you know Kansas City and Green Bay is off the list. Why don't we see if you can get 3 of the 5 teams that have scored at least 4 touchdowns in 4 games this season?
I'll say the LA Rams again. And I'll say, I keep wanting to say Buffalo because of the first 4 games they had. I'll say Atlanta. And I'll say Tampa.
Okay, 1 out of 3. Tampa's one of them. Tampa is one of them. So the other 4, okay? Minnesota, San Francisco, Dallas, and Cleveland. The Bills have only scored 4 touchdowns in 3 of their games. So that's where it is. So good try.
That was not a good try. Thanks, though. Just say it like it is.
So knowing Buffalo has scored at least 4 touchdowns in 3 of their 8 games, Steve, against Miami, against the Rams, and against Las Vegas, do you know where those 3 defenses rank in points allowed? Miami, the Rams, and Las Vegas. Miami's number 1.
In points allowed?
Yes, and it's due mainly to the fact that they shut out the Jets.
Shutout.
Yeah, with 24-0. The Rams, though, are number 3. The Raiders are number 25. The Seahawks, as we know, are ranked 24th in points allowed. So does more than 30 points seem possible against the Seahawks team that has given up 30 points or more in 3 of their 7 games this season?
I say yes. I say there's no question. I think the Bills could do that. Their running game came around a little bit last week, but John Brown needs to be healthy, no question. His health has little to say about that. I think, given the forecast in Buffalo for this weekend, this is a game that the over-under's got to be 61, 62 points for both these clubs. I think this is going to be one of those games.
I do think they can get over 30. I'm not impressed by this Seahawks defense. They got to come all the way east here and play on the road. They're still a little nicked up. I know they got new additions, Jamal Adams, Carlos Dunlap. They could, flash here or there in the game, but their corners are nicked up. Their safeties are average. They don't have great guys up front from a pass rushing or a run defense perspective per se. So I think the Bills will be able to have a balanced offense in this game and finish drives. So with that in mind, what number do they need to reach, Steve, to make you pretty sure they can win? We said 30 points is the floor. What number do they have to hit to make you feel good that, they can win this game?
Somewhere between, it's got to be between 35 and 40. I'll say 37 and a half.
Yeah, that's so funny because I was going to say 37. 37, and I feel pretty good they can win the game.
Yeah, I think the Bills' defense can outperform the Seattle defense, no question. And if you can keep Seattle at around 30, between 28 and 32, that gives your offense enough possessions and enough opportunities to score more. It may come down to a field goal on either side of this, no question.
Yeah.
But I think that's what we're looking at. I don't see any way around it. I mean, we could go over there and it could be 6-3 at the half and then everything changes.
That's not happening.
I don't think that's going to happen. Not on a day when it's going to be beautiful out.
Yeah. All right, so here to tell us why Seattle has been so successful scoring is a guy who knows a little bit about putting up points himself. The trigger man in the run-and-shoot offense of the Houston Oilers, Hall of Famer Warren Moon, a Seahawks analyst, took time to speak with us this week. Joining us on the line right now to get us up to speed a little bit more on the Seahawks is Hall of Fame quarterback and former teammate of the man to my left, one Warren Moon. Warren, thanks for joining us. How's this COVID world we're all living in treating you, sir?
I hate to say that I'm getting used to it, but I've adjusted to it. I'm sure like everybody else has, but I think a lot of us have the fatigue as well. We're tired of it, and it's time to get back to our normal lives, but we just can't do that right now. So it's really tough because you want to get back to being social and the things that we are as Americans, but because of this nagging virus that just keeps hanging around, we have to be a little bit more diligent about it.
Let me ask, before we get into the Seahawks and how great a season they're having and Russell Wilson and all that, I got to ask a question to ask you, and you're a great one to ask. You played in the Canadian Football League. You came to the NFL in '84. You played through 2000. You're a Hall of Fame quarterback. But you look around the league and you see guys like Joe Burrow, Justin Herbert, even Pat Mahomes, and Deshaun Watson, and guys like this. Do you think that it is easier now to play quarterback in the NFL than it was because of the protections, maybe because of the offensive schemes or what have you? How does it compare when you came in 1984? How difficult is it to play quarterback in the NFL now compared to then?
You know, I think those things help a lot, Steve. There's no question about it, being protected better and the receivers not being able to be as physical. The defensive backs with receivers be as physical down the field after 5 yards. You can't touch these guys. Makes it a little bit easier for releases and things like that. But I think the big key why these young quarterbacks are having such success is they start playing the game a lot earlier at the quarterback position as far as throwing the football. They're in these quarterback camps and 7-on-7 camps as early as junior high school, and they go all the way through high school. They have really good quarterback coaches now coaching them from the time they're in junior high school through high school. So they come into the league a lot more well prepared. And I think one of the things that the NFL has done, different offensive coordinators around the league, is they've adapted their offenses to what these young guys are doing in college. So when they come into the NFL, there's not a huge learning curve for them. They're basically doing the same types of things they did in college, and it makes a easier transition. So I think that's part of the reason why you're seeing these guys come into the league so prepared to play.
All right, let's take a look here at the Seahawks, Warren, and I guess we'll start with the quarterback because who else better to evaluate this guy than a former one and a Hall of Famer? So he's pretty much tearing the cover off of point production here. He's got at least 3 touchdown passes in every single game that they've played. The team has 4 touchdowns in every single game that they've played at least. You look at the Bills, they have 16 passing touchdowns on the season. I mean, Metcalf and Lockett alone have 14 receptions for touchdowns. So what has made them so prolific a scoring team, even though they're playing in a pretty tough division, the NFC West?
Yeah, you mentioned it, the quarterback. Russell Wilson is just playing at another level this year. And it's not that he hasn't had the ability to play at this level. It's just that they haven't allowed him to play at this level because their offense up until the last couple of years has been more of a run-dominated offense to go along with a dynamic defense. Well, they don't have that same type of defense no more. So now they've kind of opened up their offense and they're having to outscore teams. And it's something that's scary because you just can't outscore everybody every week. And they ran into that in Arizona a couple of weeks ago. They scored 30-something points, but they still lost the football game. So their defense is going to have to improve, but Russell's having a great year. He's throwing the ball with great accuracy. He's got 2 dynamic receivers on the outside, one that's really big and fast, another one that's small and fast, and they both are really good route runners. So Russell has a great chemistry going with those guys as well. And his offensive line is playing better this year, giving him much better protection, and he's getting the ball out of his hands when he needs to.
We've seen here in Buffalo with Josh Allen and the addition of Stephon Diggs along with John Brown and Cole Beasley, and how that one top guy being added to the lineup has changed things, at least statistically. Now they're scoring points like an NFL team, and they can move the football, and they have a passing attack that looks like an NFL team, whereas in the last couple of years when Josh was developing, it didn't look that way. To explain to us as a quarterback, and you just said about Russell Wilson with Lockett and Metcalf out there, what's it change for you when you're taking snaps, when you look out there and you've got a guy on either side that is that good?
Well, it gives you options, and they also have a really good tight end as well in Greg Olsen, and then they have Will Dissly, who came on a couple of years ago, had some injuries, but he's a very capable tight end as well. So when you've got those types of weapons to throw the football to, it really makes it easier for you as a quarterback, because we all know a quarterback is only as good as the people that surround him, because you can't do it all by yourself. You've got to have good pieces and complementary pieces for yourself. And Russell has that now. He's never had a receiver like a DK Metcalf since he's been here. His receivers the year they went to the Super Bowl were Jermaine Kearse and Doug Baldwin, 2 relatively small receivers that didn't have great speed. This guy's 6'4", 230 pounds and runs, 4.3 in the 40 to go along with Tyler Lockett, who has that same type of speed, doesn't have the same build, but a really great route runner and excellent hands. So you've got a lot of different options when you're Russell Wilson on this offense, and he's taking advantage of all of them.
How would you characterize their run game, Warren? I mean, they've been a beat-up, banged-up group this season, and this week is no different. I mean, heck, they had to turn to DJ Dallas last week to be their primary ball carrier in the run game. So how would you characterize their run game right now? Clearly, it seems like a complementary piece to what their identity is on offense, but how would you characterize that run game for them?
Inconsistent, only because, like you said, all those guys have been banged up. Chris Carson is a guy who's he's a 1,200-yard runner last year, but he's had some problems this year with injuries. And Carlos Hyde, who they brought in, was a 1,000-yard back with Houston last year. He's a great complimentary back, but he's been hurt the last few weeks too. So you also have Travis Homer, who's a young guy that they think a lot of, and he's been banged up. So now they're down, like you said, to DJ Dallas, who's a rookie. He's a talented guy, but it's a lot to put on his shoulders to come in here and try and carry this football team in the running game and also stay in there on third down. But he did a great job last week against the 49ers, scored 2 touchdowns, but they need to get some of these guys back into the lineup so they, for one, can be a little bit more balanced offensively so you don't have to throw the ball all the time. And being able to run the football helps your defense out that hasn't been playing that great, because you eat up time on the clock and you control the time of possession. That's something that can help any defense out that might be struggling.
Yeah, before the deadline, the Seahawks traded for Carlos Dunlap of Cincinnati Bengals. What do they hope Dunlap can change for their defense?
Well, one of the biggest problems with their defense is you got to get pressure on the quarterback, as with any defense, but definitely when you're playing the type of zone that the Seahawks have played since Pete Carroll has been here. They've always had good guys that can pressure the quarterback, because when you pressure the quarterback, they've got to get the ball out of their hands now, and it allows that defense to really rally to the football and make tackles and limit their yards after the catch. That's what this defense is predicated about. But when you have a lot of time back there to throw the football, now you can push it down the field a little bit longer, and you get bigger plays within your offense. So Carlos Dunlap, a guy who's been in the league 10 years, he's had a solid career in Cincinnati, became a little frustrated there. I think he'll come in and give them some of that pressure that they need off the edge to help their running, to help their pass rush, which will help this defense out. And then you get hopefully Jamal Adams back this week as well, another guy who's very dynamic on this defense. So as they get some pieces back into this defense, they feel like they're going to play a little bit better on that side of the ball. If they can get this defense to play somewhere in the middle of the pack to go along with this offense the way they're playing, they feel like they have a great shot of going far in the playoffs.
Having not seen every single game, Warren, that the Seahawks have played as of yet, has any of their opposing defenses tried to, play like an umbrella-style defense or a cover two shell and just force Russell to kind of nickel and dime his way down the field? Or has anybody turned to that, and has it proven effective in any way, shape, or form against this high-powered Seahawks passing game?
Well, the great thing about Russell this year is he's been very patient. He's taken his shots when he has them available, but when he doesn't have them available and teams do try and play soft back there, they either run the football or he's been very patient and he takes the underneath route. So he's a very smart quarterback, doesn't turn it over a lot. He had a very uncharacteristic game a couple of weeks ago against Arizona where he threw 3 interceptions, but other than that, he takes very good care of the ball. And if you do give him time, because you're not bringing pressure, he'll scramble around and wait for somebody to come open. And these guys are very good at getting open once he's on the move. So you're kind of damned if you do, damned if you don't with this offense right now.
You mentioned Jamal Adams. We here in Buffalo saw him play for the Jets, and we know that guy's a really good player. How does he change things in the back end? You said about Carlos Dunlap, if they get a little more pressure, it'll help the back end of the defense. And Jamal Adams hasn't been in there. Do Seattle fans appreciate him for the player he might be for them? Because we here in Buffalo saw him play really well for the New York Jets.
Well, he came out with a great impact his first couple of games with us, and Kenny Norton, our defensive coordinator, has been using him in a lot of different ways, bringing him off the edge a lot of times with pressure to pressure the quarterback, because we haven't had that pass rush. He's a very dynamic player. He's a very emotional player, and he's a great leader on that defense and kind of gives them a little bit of a swag that they've been lacking. So I think he does a lot of things for this defense besides his athletic ability.
And then the other curious thing, Snacks Harrison, who remains on the practice squad. Initially, they signed him and they said, oh, we're going to get him up to speed, and then we'll, look at maybe getting him on the active roster eventually. But, I mean, this has been a top 10 run defense. That is one thing they have done well on the defensive side of the ball. Is this just an example of the guys that are on the roster are playing plenty well enough and they don't need to bring Harrison up to the active roster?
Well, I think you'll see Snacks on the roster here pretty soon. But like you said, they have played well against the run, but teams haven't run the ball as much against them because they've been able to throw the football successfully, especially when you get behind. Our offense has tended to get out to leads. So that kind of takes you out of your running game because you're playing catch up all the time and you're having to throw the football. So those running statistics might be a little bit misleading, but I think Snacks will really help us not only in run defense, but he'll also be one of those guys that could push the pocket from the inside and allow those guys on the edge to have a cleaner run to the quarterback. So he can be very effective in the pass game as well.
Last one I had for you was Bobby Wagner. There was some talk that he wasn't really playing up to his standards early in the season, but man, last week he was all over the place against the 49ers. I mean, 11 tackles, 3 for loss, couple of sacks, 4 quarterback hits. Is he back to being the all-pro linebacker they need him to be?
Yeah, I don't think he ever was gone anywhere. He's just I think he got tired of hearing some of that talk, and he had a great game last week. But he's been pretty consistent. If you look at the number of tackles that he's had, he's their leading tackler. When the whole defense isn't playing well, it reflects on everybody. But last week, their defense played really, really good, except for the last, maybe garbage time couple of touchdowns that the 49ers scored. That game wasn't as close as what it looked like. But Bobby has been a consummate pro this year. He's playing solid football, but he just had one of those games that Bobby's capable of having when he needs to on a big stage. And against the 49ers, he needed to have that type of game, and he rose to the challenge.
Warren, it's great seeing you. You look great. I hope you stay healthy during this COVID pandemic, and hope we get a chance to maybe go out and have a brewski once or twice sometime in the future.
Yeah, we can do that, Steve. And I want to tell you something, Steve. The reason we lost that game back in '92 or whenever it was is because you had left our football team. I just want you to know that's all your fault.
There you go.
Yeah, right.
Look at that bouquet that Warren's throwing out to you there. Wow.
Total bunk.
Check's in the mail, Warren.
That is total BS. He knows
Check is in the mail.
It's great seeing you, man. You look great.
All right, guys. Take care. Have a great weekend.
Thanks very much. All right, again, our thanks to Warren Moon, the Hall of Famer. Good insight from him. And time now, Steve, to discuss one of our more interesting Twitter polls of the week, which was asking the fans, what do you want to see the most in Sunday's game against the Seahawks? And we gave them choices. A, Josh and the offense going toe-to-toe. B, the defense controlling Wilson and company. C, just win no matter what it looks like. Or D, something else. And you see the overwhelming majority, Steve, was for, hey, just win, baby. They don't care what it looks like. I'm not surprised.
Yeah. No, not at all. And that's a no-brainer as well. That's much like the New England game this last week. You would have liked to have seen the Bills win by double digits against a team that's been crushing them for 2 decades, and they were all battered and beaten up and stuff. But you know what? At the end of the game, when you win by 3 points, you still counts as a win. And there's no editorial page on the record book. I mean, you are what your record says you are, and the Bills now got that win last week. And if you get one over this team, all your critics will have to do some editorializing because they're going to have to take a big, hard look at Buffalo and what they're all about. Because if you beat a team like Seattle, that says something about how good you can be going forward.
Well, use whatever cliche you want. Statement game, measuring stick game. You beat a 6-1 team with a guy who's probably been the best quarterback in football for the first half of the season. That's going to get headline-type attention, and deservedly so, because that is a franchise-defining type win. You beat a team like this. I mean, granted, it's in your barn, but no fans, no atmosphere. You're doing this thing on your own.
Certainly, it says something about where your team is going forward. And I think about this as well. The Seahawks are coming in here knowing this is also a measuring stick for them. Most of their teams, if not all of them now, with last night, with Thursday night football game with the San Francisco 49ers going to 4-5 on the season. Now they don't have a winning record either. Nobody that the Seahawks have beaten have a winning record at this point. At least it was before that game last night. They have not played a gauntlet of people, and if they can come in and beat a good team with Buffalo 6-2, yeah, that says something about them as well. So, yeah, this is a big game for both teams. Certainly it is for the Bills in their own building, but it's not any less big for the Seahawks.
Well, speaking of Twitter, Steve, I did a little poking around this week on that fine social media site, and I thought I had come across DK Metcalf's site, and I mistook, I should say, a diamond emoji for a blue check mark. So I thought it was his actual Twitter account. It turns out it's one of his fans that retweets everything bad that has ever been said about DK Metcalf. As we know, when he was in the pre-draft process, you know, he didn't have spectacular stats. He had an injury history that included a neck injury and not tremendous production at the college level for various reasons at Ole Miss. And then even at the combine, when he ran like a 4.33, people were dogging him saying, well, you know, it's only straight line speed, blah, blah, blah. So I came across some of these, and one of them belonged to a Bills fan. So I'm going to read this for you. This guy said back on March 3rd, 2019, heading into the 2019 draft, you know, when Metcalf was made the last pick of round 2, running really fast in a straight line isn't indicative of how a player will do in the NFL. If the Bills draft this kid based on his 40 time, they deserve to continue to be terrible. A star receiver doesn't turn a franchise around. Depth and fundamentals do. I got news for this guy, Hot Take Hitman. Metcalf's done a pretty good job at turning around the passing game of the Seahawks.
Yeah, he's played really well. And he's got think back, Brownie, to plays that wide receivers have made that you remember. Certainly there's a couple by Terrell Owens that going in overtime against the Packers and Steve Young hitting him right in the middle of the front and center of the end zone. He catches it, gets whacked by 2 guys, boom, game over. The catch by Odell Beckham Jr., the one-handed catch. Yeah. And DK Metcalf has a play just like that in the second year of his career, running down Budda Baker and preventing a touchdown, which that drive, even though it started for the Cardinals inside the 10-yard line of the Seahawks, they didn't score a touchdown on that, and they have DK Metcalf to thank. He's got a signature play like that people are going to associate with him forever. And that's hard to do in a league full of elite athletes.
Yeah. And I just want to read a couple of more here because some of these trolling comments, you know, before he was anything in the NFL, they are rich, man. This guy says, yeah, he can run fast, but can he put his arms over his head to catch the ball now that he's built like Tony Atlas? We all remember the pre-draft photo of him and A.J. Brown. I mean, they were all yoked up, and this guy didn't think he had any flexibility left. This other guy, who is a Bills fan, said neck injury is a hard pass. And then this guy said, I looked up his college stats and was like, meh. John Ross almost had as many stats this year as he's had in 3 years at Ole Miss. So it's just like, wow.
Right. They forget, though, that at Ole Miss, he wasn't on the field very much.
No.
He got an injury his junior he's got an injury his junior year, kept him out and all that. But let me tell you something. When he was healthy, even as a true freshman, he was on the field. They put him out there every single opportunity they had, and that says something about what the coaching staff at Ole Miss thought about him. Even though he was at that time thought to be fragile and injury prone, when he was available, he was a difference maker, and they tried to take advantage of it every opportunity they could.
Now, I know back when you guys were playing, you'd look for bulletin board material from your opponents, you know, usually in the newspaper, because we didn't have all this online stuff. I know some of these players today use social media from fan accounts and stuff like that to kind of motivate themselves for an upcoming game. Can you imagine with the freaking cutthroat competitive guys you had in your locker room, if you had social media to use as a motivational tool? Like, all you had to tell Thurman sometimes was somebody said something about him, and you didn't even have to have specifics, and it was enough to get him ready to rip somebody's face off. I mean, social media, if your guys had that, what the hell would have happened? They might have killed somebody.
I thought exactly the same thing you did. Think of how big the chip would have been if Thurman would have had social media people talking about him on social media. He already carried around a chip the size of the stadium.
Yeah, because he was a second-round pick.
And sometimes, you remember, Thurman would construe a compliment as an insult. That's the mental gymnastics he did. So, all of this stuff, it's unbelievable. And let me tell you something, it is extremely effective as a motivational device because you feel like when you go out and play, it is a chance to absolutely slap the face of those people who have said bad things about you. They don't know you, and they're just spouting off. You know that, they know that. But the simple fact of the matter is you get a chance to answer them and just make them shut up by the way you play. That is an incredibly motivating frame of mind to be in. And almost every athlete I've ever been around, the great ones, the not so great ones, the good ones, the okay ones, everybody use that to their advantage. Every single one of them.
And I have to believe that using fan accounts or just people from the general public who are spouting off, I got to think that's an even more effective motivational tool. It's one thing if an opponent who plays in the league and knows what it takes to be a professional athlete says something about you. That's one thing. But you have some regular Joe spouting off like he knows who you are and what it takes to be a pro athlete when the vast majority of people have no idea. I got to believe that's got to incense somebody even more and turn the field on fire.
It certainly counts. And that's why you don't really see players doing it to other players as much because they understand it. Most players won't go near that because if another player says it, not only does that player from another team insult you, but when your teammates see somebody from another team is insulting you, they come to your aid. It becomes about all of us, not just you.
Yeah.
So if, for instance, back in the day, like for instance now, if somebody starts talking smack about Cole Beasley, the entire offensive side of the ball becomes incensed and motivated and just ready and angry to go out and prove those guys wrong and helping Cole Beasley to slap him in the face. It becomes, if a player says that on the other team, it motivates the entire team, not just one guy. Some jamoke on social media will do it to some, a guy, one player. But when a player says it from another team, that's fuel for the entire locker room, and that's really dangerous.
Yeah, I didn't think of it that way, but yeah, you're 100% right. All right, Steve, good stuff this week, man.
Yeah, it's a good week. Big week, Brownie. Oh,
big week.
Gosh.
Big week. Hopefully we're talking about happier things next week.
This is something I've always said, and it's really true. Your reward for winning games or important games, your reward usually is the opportunity to play in an even more important and even bigger game. That becomes no more true than in the second half of an NFL regular season as you get into playoffs, obviously. Every time you win a big game, it sets you up for an even bigger one down the road, and that's your reward. So let's drink it in, man, because this is a big game against a really good team, and it's going to be a fun game on a beautiful day. And this is the one game, I told you this too during the week, Brownie. Don't we all wish on a day like this with perfect weather conditions in mid-November, the Mafia should be in the stadium with the team? This is when this is the low point of the fan experience in Buffalo. This just stinks.
It's a killer. But that is one to grow on, Steve. Winning big games gives you the chance to play in bigger games. This message brought to you by Steve Tasker. All right, that's all the time we have this week. Thanks for joining us here on One Bills Lite, the express lane of Bills talk. So remember, when there isn't time for 3 hours a day of One Bills Live, there's always time for One Bills Lite. For Steve Tasker, I'm Chris Brown. We'll catch up with you next week, everybody.